Town Hall for July the 25th, 2016, and I want to recognize that we're on the traditional territories of the Nanaimo First Nations. Now, the first item of business is that we're going to get an overview of how the Town Hall is going to work. That will be provided by Mr. Cooper, and we're going to have basically a backgrounder on the strategic plan by the City Manager, Ms. Tracy Samra. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Samra and then over to Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just make a couple of introductory comments about the strategic plan update and how it relates to other city processes. The strategic plan update was a decision by Council to use the existing strategic plan and all of the public consultation and engagement that was undertaken during its construction and build on it to reflect what their vision and values were for the remainder of their term. As part of this exercise, they met over 4 different days between February, March, April, May, and June to review the strategic plan and some other documents pertaining to capital projects that are from existing community plans, neighborhood plans, and other types of reports regarding capital projects that the city's undertaken. So at the end of the day in June, Mayor and Council landed on a reformatted vision statement that reflects how they value and vision Nanaimo, and it's built from the old strategic plan. They also reworked each of the values and changed them from short statements with action plans to something more aspirational. This value was important for these reasons, and these are the types of things that are tied to the values. A last step of the process was to identify strategic priorities for the last 2.5 years of their term, and they chose these on their own, and they had a number of them as they went through it, but landed on the 5 that are in the update. And they describe what their strategic priorities are, what they mean to them, and then they go on to provide some examples of the types of things that can be done by the city through its operations to achieve those strategic priorities. So the purpose of a strategic plan is to set a vision, values, and priorities. It's not a detailed operational plan that has capital assets and capital and funding put to it. It's an aspirational document that talks about Council's view of the community and what it wants and hopes to achieve over the course of their term. The next step after the strategic plan update is finally accepted by Council is where a lot of the heavy lifting gets done. Once staff know what Council's vision is and what priorities they want us to work on, as part of the 2017 budget process, which will kick off in September, staff will come back with recommendations to Council on the types of operational things that we can do and have been doing to achieve their outcomes. So the translation from vision and strategic priorities to actual allocation of resources, staffing, and capital projects, and allocating funding for that happens during the budgeting process. And they lock in the funds for their priority projects during that process. So this is merely the first step of public engagement. Through the budget cycle starting in September, there'll be a series of COW meetings that will have staff coming forward with what their recommendations are for operational plans for Council to consider. Projects may form part of that, and that'll be an opportunity for the public to come forward and make comments on that at that time. So there's a linkage between the strategic plan and between the annual budget cycle. So that's typically how things are done. The core services review, I think its #1 recommendation was that Council needed to set its vision and strategic priorities so that staff and the rest of the community and stakeholders could start providing opportunities and recommendations to council on how to achieve those. So I think to that end, I know the public's going to be engaging this evening quite extensively, but also stakeholders such as the Chamber of Commerce and the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation are going to be coming forward and making some statements as to the strategic plan update. So I think that's about it. I think the last sort of comment that I'll make is, as part of the communications package, each of the proposed strategic priorities, like phase development of the South Downtown waterfront, is described by council, and then below that are a list of things that are in existing finance plan for this year. So staff looked at its operational plan and said, what am I doing this year in the 2016 budget that can achieve those outcomes? And so this is meant as a sampling of the stuff that's being done by staff right now to support these strategic priorities. I guess the only final comment that I would make then is that there are strategic capital projects as part of the update. Those aren't a definitive list of what will be done. It's not a matter of either or these are the only projects being done. They're just an example of some priorities that could be moved up in the year that they're funded, that they could potentially be funded more extensively if this is what council wants to do as it goes through its 2017 to 2021 budget cycle. So they're meant there to be an example of the types of things that could be done to achieve these outcomes. And I think with that, I will make no more comments. Have fun.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mary Kay. What I'm going to do quickly is take everyone through the process of how an eTown Hall works. It's been several months since we last did one, and it's important that we lay out the process so that everyone can participate in a way that works for this format. So with an eTown Hall, what we're trying to do is reach out to as many different people in the community as possible, and we do that by having a traditional town hall interface, such as those of you who are here tonight. But we also take questions from Facebook, Twitter, our web form, and our phone number. And up on the screen are the different methods that you can reach us by. So for the Twitter hashtag, it's Nanaimo TH, and that's the web address for the Facebook page. You also have the web form email, our website address, and then if you wish to call the city, you can do that tonight as well. There are basically about 4 roles that take part in an eTown Hall. First of all, you have mayor and council, and we also have staff here tonight that can answer technical questions should there be any. There's a moderator and a sorter. Their job is to take all of that input that comes from those resources and send them to my role, which is the presenter. And what I do is I read out the questions that I get or facilitate questions coming in from those of you who are here in person tonight. When you're coming forward as a speaker, so those of you who are here tonight, a couple things I'd ask you to bear in mind. First of all, keep your comments focused on Council's strategic priorities update. That's what we're here to talk about. And there are 5 of them. So the first one is phase development of the South Downtown waterfront, recreation, culture, sports, and tourism, public safety, governance renewal, and community wellness. When you come up, if you could initially state which of these priorities you're speaking against, and then we'll put that slide back up so everybody has the context for the item you're talking. If you have multiple priorities, we'll put them all up. And then in the spirit of having time for everyone to participate, if you could keep your comments obviously as succinct as possible, everyone would appreciate that. We have 2 hours scheduled for tonight's event. We can extend that longer if needed, or if we don't need as much time, we'll obviously end the meeting sooner rather than having it continue on. And I just want to emphasize that sometimes when you have an event like this, people aren't necessarily comfortable getting up in front of the mic. That's why you have access to put in questions through those resources, Twitter in particular. If you wish to write something down, I have a stack of traditional forms and a whole bunch of pens. You're welcome to come and talk to me at the end of the event and write down your comments, and then I'll make sure those are put into the selection of feedback. For tonight, we're basically focusing on more questions than comments. We've had to date over 100 items submitted. The vast majority of those are comments, so members of the community commenting on council's strategic priorities. Within that, we have questions, and there's an obligation to provide an answer. So I'll be mostly putting forward questions that are being brought forward, and I would suggest that if you have questions, this would be your opportunity for those of you who are here this evening. So with that said, are there any questions on how this works? All right, we'll start it.
So if I could add, Mr. Cooper, that what we're hoping is that the questions will be short and succinct. We've got over 100 already in the queue. And as far as council, if there's somebody who has a burning desire to answer a question, by all means. But if we note that not everybody needs to answer every question. The other thing...
Than 100, because that includes all of the comments, which I won't be discussing. Okay. The comments will be made available to the public on our website. A lot of people just expressed what they thought, so we're going to focus on the questions here tonight. There are much less questions than comments.
Yes, and we do have some staff available that are going to help us with some of the answers to some of the very specific questions.
Right.
Well, we're hoping, Your Worship, that this is the strategic plan update, so it's a higher level. The next phase is when you go through the budgeting, because there's not going to be, you've seen the spreadsheets that were prepared, these come from existing plans. That type of detail simply doesn't exist for a number of items. They've been for the Harewood Neighborhood Plan. These are good ideas, you should do them. Staff haven't taken those and translated them into business cases or put resources behind them. The best that they've done is identified opportunities for the city to partner with other stakeholders, if there's environmental issues tied to it, and other issues such as that. So we're hoping that there'll be minimal use of staff tonight, and it mostly be council interacting with the public.
So it's on our strategic priorities, predominantly is where we want to focus. Before we get started, I just want to wish Councillor Pratt a happy birthday. Mr. Cooper.
Okay, so given that you're all here tonight in person, I'm going to put the first opportunity out to engage to the audience. Is there someone who'd like to come forward and provide a question to council? The gentleman over here, we'll start with you. And you can just come down and stand at the podium. And unlike a traditional question period, you don't have to state your name or where you're from. Just ask your question. You're good to go. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, I'm from Vancouver. New here for a few months. Rent refugee, basically. My question is about Nanaimo is, it used to be a resource-based area, and now it's a tourism-based area. But from what I see, what you guys do in tourism, it really sucks. I mean, there's nothing happening. The big concert you had when you're charging people $50 to get into the Chilliwack Trooper concert, you close the beer gardens down at 8:30 at night, where they didn't start till like 10 o'clock at night. I mean, this was Vancouver 20, 30 years ago.
What's your question?
My question is, like, what are you going to be doing to promoting tourism? Because resources is gone. Tourism is all we got left. So what are you going to be doing to promote tourism? And, do it in more of a Vancouver style as opposed to let's just close the city down at 8 o'clock at night?
Thank you, sir. I do know that I was there, as was Councillor Hong, and I know that there's probably a couple thousand people that very much enjoyed themselves at that event that you referred to, and that the weekend festival was for the entire community, and it was very, very well received by tourists and locals alike. Councillor Hong.
Thanks. Well, I can answer that question for you. The concert itself was privately funded, so not a dime of taxpayer money went to pay for these artists. Mind you, it's a city park, so it's not completely free, and we did get some RCMP service. So that's why it was $50. Beer gardens closed down early because traditionally the Bathtub Marine Festival has been terrible.
1975.
Sir.
This is why the Bathtub Society has rebuilt the event to more of a family-oriented event as opposed to a drunken fest. Is the reason why the beer garden's closed, so the families can enjoy the concert. That's my answer for that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper.
All right. The next question I'll take from our website. So this is coming in from the web submissions. And the question reads, under the priority of community wellness, where is sustainable food, support for agriculture, and food production? And that would be within Council's strategic priority of community wellness. Certainly, I can read it a second time. So this is under the priority of community wellness. Where is sustainable food support for agriculture and food production?
Well, I can, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I think, and just if I may, I think all questions and comments are welcome, and some won't always be popular, and some may be less popular than others. But I think it's important that we hear everybody's thoughts and concerns tonight, because that's how we learn about what people are thinking out there. And you shouldn't be guarded or measured or tepid. Speak from your heart and speak from what you think, from your experiences living in this city and how you'd like to see it moving forward. The specific question as it relates to the entire agriculture improvements, if you will, is not a simple solution, and it's really, really complex. But I think if we can move, one thing that we are contemplating moving forward on is a farmers market that would support all of the people within the region that are growers and farmers in our community, and at least to start that entire awareness concept of purchasing local. And if purchasing local means from small business, and small business, in my humble opinion, drives our cities and our communities, those are the people, those folks are the backbone of our community, and they work real hard and they roll their sleeves up. So I hope by simply the virtue of the fact that we are looking at Bevan Park Recreation Center as more of a full-fledged farmers market, I hope that we can get the 10% factor where we start to purchase local and we make people more aware of how important that concept is. We've had that in front of us before, and I shamefully would say we haven't done a very good job at it. I don't think that we've done a very good job at drilling into how we can support our local producers and our local businesses better than we have in the past. So to me, we're moving in the right direction. Will it happen fast enough? Probably not. But I do believe that we're moving in the right direction. And that, probably above all else, to start getting there and making steps. And I think that staff hear this loud and clear. I think they've heard it before. I think we're hearing it again, and it's becoming far more important now than ever, the way that our world is going. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I sure hope that we are more responsible in supporting our local businesses and that are in this industry, because it's a necessity. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for that question, whoever submitted it. I think it's an important one. I think it's very topical, and I think it's something that is increasingly on not just the radar of council, but the radar of our community. And I would just like to add on to Councillor Bestwick's comments that I think to an extent we have supported sustainable food production. And one of the first things that we did, and it started a couple of years ago, was the support that Parks and Recreation Commission gave to the community greenhouses, which are relocating into Bevan Park. And now we have the Beban Park Master Plan, which, as Councillor Bestwick indicates, is very supportive of the concept of the farmers market being there, and we look forward to seeing that initiative proceed. So I think this is something that's on our radar, and I think we are doing what we can to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
With our regional district partners, we've also got an agricultural area plan that looks at all forms of agriculture and policies based on agriculture. And the main mandate, it was adopted in October 2012, and it was based on sustainable practices, food growth, aquaculture, agriculture, and talking about the policies to protect that land for future growth and future food supply. So working with our regional district partners, all the municipalities in the region, we have an agricultural plan that we've put in place to promote food production. It's part of it. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
A number of years ago, Nanaimo created an urban food gardens planning guidelines that unfortunately not a lot of people in the community are taking onus on providing, because it actually allows every community member who has a piece of property, whether they're renting or owning, to commit a certain amount of that property to urban food gardening and being able to sell the items from that property. So that's huge, and people aren't taking advantage of it. Go on the city website, Google urban food gardens. There's a really cool brochure. Just quickly, urban food gardens are intended to be small-scale gardens which can be easily incorporated into a neighborhood. The size of an urban food garden is limited to 600 meters squared, or 24% of the lot area, where a lot is greater than 2,400 meters squared. On-site sales are permitted, but are limited to no more than 60 days within the calendar year, so on and so forth. So it's a good opportunity for people to make a little bit of extra money and contribute to food in the community, locally grown, and no pesticides able to be used. So get on it.
Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the viewers this evening, those online on television in attendance this evening, for participating in this eTown meeting. This question around food and agriculture, on whether there's a comment or question, dominated our sheet here. In my view, I'm doing a quick breakdown on the subjects. So I don't have any great wisdom on how to solve it, but definitely want to let the public know, definitely a support of it. Where, like, for example, we touched on the farmers market at Beban, but we've got to make sure we get also more other remote locations for around the city, so not everyone can get to Beban, support that and create the space for this to happen, and also where people can organically grow food in our region. So my final comment on this subject would be, for those that may have great ideas or any suggestions, please reach out. And this is a subject I think this council will take very serious, as it's a necessity in our community. Transportation costs are rising. Organic food's obviously the way to go, and so just want to share those few comments. Thank you, Philip. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, and I want you to know I took note of your comment that not every councillor has to speak on these issues. So I just want to add to what Councillor Kipp said about the agricultural plan that we have regionally. I think regionally is the way to go on something like agriculture. So towards that end, the regional district does have a community advisory committee to the RDN, and it's made up of community members from as far up as Bowser, all the way to the south border of Ladysmith. And there are other members representing regional agricultural organizations. And interesting to me is a member representing shellfish aquaculture. So then the elected members are electoral area representatives from District 68 and 69. So again, that wide range of membership on that advisory committee to assist the regional district when they're making up their agricultural plan. So I think we take it seriously. Here in town, we support community gardens, we support the farmers market, we support community kitchens, and we are a member of the RDN. And I know that a former Nanaimo councillor did chair the agricultural committee at the RDM. So I think we have our fingers, firmly pressed into that pie, and we're moving ahead. Probably not fast enough, but I think that there is some energy that is moving in that kind of quicker and quicker and quicker way. So, there's members in the audience here who have been involved in community gardens and could speak to the success of them. So we're doing okay.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Just wanted to address this topic because I come from a farming background with my family, so I think sustainable food is very important, but I think being a farmer isn't a very high-profile job that you wish upon yourself or your family. So I'm glad that sustainable food is important. Local grown food is important, and I echo what Councillor Bestwick said. Supporting local gives the opportunity for people to become farmers and to enjoy what they do. And I think that's very important. I think we have school programs that have community gardens. I know I pass Fairview School every day, and they have a community garden, and others. The YPN has done a great job turning some of the parking or the gas stations into community gardens. So I think we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't going to chime in on this one, but I hear what the person said when they wrote this one. And that is that, in 1976, about 85% of our food that was consumed on Vancouver Island was grown on Vancouver Island. We're down to about 5% now, and we've got 3 days supply normally on Vancouver Island to serve the needs of Vancouver Island. So we do need to look at this much more seriously, all up and down the island, and we need to ensure that we have proper taxation regimes that make farming profitable. We need to ensure that we provide services such as water at a rate that farmers can afford, and an initiative that we're already working on. Even if you grow your crops and you've got the crops ready to go, you need to have a place to market it. So you have to be able to present it to market. And so this initiative at Bevan Park to create a year-round farmers market is going to go a long way to that end. Thank you. Next question.
All right. I'll turn to the audience. And again, I'd just like to remind speakers coming forward from the audience if they could state which of the priorities they're speaking about. So who is available to step forward?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me today. My name is Andre Sullivan, and I'm the chair of the Nanaimo Economic Development Corp. I'm sorry for breaking the rules here, but I'm not going to be asking a question, but more so general comments, and I'll be speaking to all 5 priorities.
Comments are welcome as well as questions.
Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to first of all commend you. I know that 6 months ago you were starting from a standing start in terms of the strategic plan, and it expired. And to get to the point where you have so far, it takes a lot of work. Must have taken a lot of meetings, a lot of work on staff's time. So I commend you for getting where you are and getting public consultation so early in the process. I really enjoy the addition of the active lifestyle value and the further explanation of all of them. Obviously, as the Economic Development Board, our main focus is, and we're renewing our strategic plan to mirror yours, will be on the economic health side. But but we can't just look at economic health in isolation. We have to recognize that they're all interconnected. One of our big priorities is to bring the average wage in Nanaimo up. And of course, that has benefits for all of the various categories you looked at. I know we're supposed to speak on the 5 strategic priorities, and please do. I have to say that the South Downtown waterfront and the potential transit hub or whatever is going to be in that space is the most exciting project in Nanaimo. Over the next 20, 30, 50 years, I think we all know that that's where the development will happen, and to have this kind of undeveloped coastal downtown is an incredible opportunity. It's also an incredible challenge. We know there's lots of stakeholders there, and we know there's lots of competing interests, but I think if we're all talking like you guys have done so well over the last few months, we'll get to a great spot and can't wait to see what that becomes. It doesn't have to be industrial land downtown. The vision for this could be a front door for Vancouver Island, so we can ask ourselves what we want there. Recreation, culture, sports, and tourism. I actually really appreciate the fact that those are all put together. It does recognize that they're all interconnected. I was lucky enough to be a volunteer for the BC Summer Games, and I really got to see firsthand how recreation facilities, tourism, and community pride are all dramatically interconnected. You can't measure it just for economic development or tourism benefit or community well-being. They have to be measured in all capacities, and I applaud you for taking a move in that area. Public safety and community wellness are both great priorities. Again, you can't be an economic development officer. You can't grow a city unless you take care of these things. Nanaimo's already in a good place for this stuff, but to continually focus on this allows the platform for a community to grow. It makes a better community. And of course, governance renewal, something that you can never finish doing, always looking about the best way to run the community. And in that lens, I'm looking forward to the relationship between the NEDC Council and the various groups in town, all pulling in the same direction. As I said earlier, you guys have just finished our strategic plan. We're going through ours in September, in large part based on some of these visions and priorities you've laid in front of us. And I look forward to working with you September afterwards and getting on the same page and pushing towards some of these priorities and also some of these projects that you've laid out in front of us. So again, I commend you for the work you've done to get here so quickly, and I thank you for the time to listen.
Thank you very much. Next question.
All right, I'll take another question from the audience.
You need to come to the microphone, ma'am. Otherwise, the viewers at home can't hear you.
I'm Barbara, and this is Kara Anderson. We are here on the behalf of Community CLBC Council that we're on, and we have a few issues about people on disability and our rights. One is, why are you changing the bus route, like from downtown down to the waterfront?
I'll explain a little bit.
Yeah.
It's under public safety because right now where all the buses come in downtown, they come in on Prudhoe, and there has been rumors going around, and I don't know if they're true or not, that City Council and Transit have wanted to change that to the way they used to be at one time and put them back down at Port Place. But from the both of us, from a public safety standpoint, they're better off where they are now because we have access to police, fire department, and paramedic services. What else? There's one more. Oh, and also, this is kind of a sidebar, but we're talking about town, and this can kind of cover all of it. Both of us are community council. We have our community council at Community Living BC has a little presentation we do, and we go out and do in public and whatever, and I was just wondering if you guys would be interested.
Can we answer your first question?
Yeah. You betcha.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, ladies, for coming up to the podium. I think it's always a concern around access, especially around transport and that kind of thing. And there has been a lot of talk around the bus service and where it would best be located. However, there are no plans at the present time. And so, at least not to my knowledge, there isn't. And being on City Council, I think I would have heard the rumors too. So a lot of rumors are floating around right now, especially in terms of all of the things that we've put out there to the media. But I don't believe that there are any plans right now to do any specific changes.
One more question is about affordable housing for people that on low income, and also affordable housing for people who are on a low income that's on a disability. Because I know somebody who was attacked in the regular one, and she's a disability person, and she had to move out. She didn't feel safe in the regular one, so I was just wondering if there's a possibility to get some made for disability people, for safety reasons.
Yeah, because that kind of goes in as the way of the public safety and also community wellness, because we are a part of community.
Councillor Fuller.
I believe there are some monies coming forward from government that are going to be used in order to increase the affordable housing stock in the city. There are some projects going ahead. Nanaimo Association for Community Living has projects going ahead. So more and more of that is happening. One of the things that I've been wanting to see is a strategy on affordable housing, a complex and complete strategy that includes things like rent subsidies, includes secondary suites, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're absolutely right. We need more affordable housing, but we need a policy that's going to work to put that into action as opposed to just talking about it. And with regards to your bus question, the one up on Prideaux Street was always meant to be temporary. Now, the interesting thing is, if you put it downtown, it's easier to walk downhill than it is to walk uphill to get to one. But there is no guarantee it's going to be moved at this point. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Yocum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was it Barb and Karen?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Thank you for coming out this evening. Just want to quickly touch on the bus. The bus is just when I got on council a year and a half ago or so. There were some rumblings about or some plans for the bus to go down to the pallet station, which I think those might have been rumors you may have heard. And this is an RDN subject, and I'm personally not supportive of the bus route going down there, but I think we've got to consult more on where the bus station may go. It's been temporary for a while, as the Gord just stated, so I just want to touch on that. And also I want to just touch on this council and the RDN, the Regional District Board. I'm not sure actually we did here, but at RDN, we made a motion to send a letter to the provincial government around the rates of CLBC clients, how in my view, the mean-spirited provincial government was going to try to claw back and increase those, deduct from CLBC clients. So we did send a letter to RDN advocating for the CLBC community. And so I just want to touch on those subjects. And affordable housing is absolutely something we've got to ensure that all demographics are included, especially when people come for zoning and building apartments and whatnot. So I just want to say your voice was heard loud and clear myself, and I definitely look forward to advocating for the CLBC community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question.
All right. I'll take this one from our web resources. And the question is focused on the waterfront specifically, and it reads, what is the status of the Departure Bay walkway?
Councillor Beswick.
I feel like this is we're campaigning again, but not all of us need to answer the questions. The Departure Bay waterfront walkway was something we discussed in about 2006-07, way back then, as a consideration, and then we had the high water mark things and all kinds of encumbrances, and the bank of the Solaire residence property going into the foreshore, and all of those things that seem to steer us away from making the Departure Bay connection, if you will, to Stewart Avenue a reality. And since then, on balance and then priorities, monies have been invested elsewhere with waterfront developments and Swilana and Maffeo and so on. I don't think that there's a person on this table that wouldn't like to see the walkway extended. When we spoke to the waterfront development is one of our priorities. Its focus, we discussed that a lot. We discussed the Departure Bay walkway a lot. We discussed the improvements of the Stewart Avenue and the connectivity and on the water and up to Stewart Avenue and back down and all of those things, and we've discussed them, I think, rather intently. With the Wilcox site and with the South Downtown Waterfront Initiative and it becoming a hub of activity, be it a transportation hub of activity and an area of growth for density and residential and otherwise, it seemingly has become a priority, I would say, obviously, for this council. But I think, as our city manager said on the onset, what we're discussing with our priorities in terms of waterfront development doesn't eliminate other opportunities or projects that have been or are on the books. It just might move them up or down the queue. And, we can be applauded or criticized for both or either approach. So I'm not convinced that we're going to connect Departure Bay to Stewart Avenue in the near future. But I do think that the South Downtown Waterfront Initiative is something where our focus is right now. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that's just where we are right now. If the monies were available and it was an easy do and an easy, simple thing without a lot of DFO and ministries, and my guess is it would probably already be done. But that's not the case.
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. I'd just like to chime in on this one because I really do believe that the waterfront walkway is a real jewel in our community. And I do believe that it would be wonderful to see it go all the way to Departure Bay and all the way to the Nanaimo lands on the other side. And we've certainly talked around this a lot, and there's a lot of enthusiasm related to the waterfront walkway. But this is an expensive venture, and it's one of the things that we need to figure out where it fits into our budgeting, where it fits into our priorities. And I don't think the walkway is ever going to be lost to our attention or future council's attentions, because I do believe it is a link that people really treasure. Anybody who uses our waterfront certainly appreciates what has been done so far. And I do believe there will be work done in the future. When it will be done, what part will be done, that will depend on how we put our, where we focus our priorities. But when you look at this number 1, phase development of South Downtown Waterfront, that could be part of it. It might not be, but we are really focusing on that area as one of our priorities.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councillor Beswick. He outlined it quite clearly. It's a difficult task. It's an expensive task, and council after council has sorely wanted to do it, but it's a big obstacle. There are some parts, however, of a waterfront walkway that are less difficult, have less obstacles, and are more likely to be completed without the cost of the Departure Bay one. And that task will turn over, I think, to our staff to give us some recommendations on where we might be able to find those sections. And I think that once we have designated the section, we will get to work on it. So I wouldn't expect that it is a big, long, way in the future project. I think it's one of the ones that we actually could complete if we choose the right section.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to make a quick comment on this topic as well. I was in Victoria a couple of weeks ago and talking to a fellow there who used to live in Nanaimo and attended Malaspina College when it was Malaspina. And he said he'd come back to Nanaimo recently, and the first thing that struck him, he said he just couldn't get over the improvements to the downtown area. And he said, especially that waterfront park with the double-barreled name. And I said, Maffeo Sutton. Yeah, that's it. He said, that's just wonderful. And then the second thing he said was, and I absolutely love the waterfront walkway. And he said, are you going to extend it all the way to Departure Bay? And my answer to him was, I wish we could. I wish we could do it quickly. I think eventually it will happen, but there are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of costs that have to be taken into account. So it's not going to happen in the short term, but it's definitely something that this council has talked about, has identified as something to keep in mind and accomplish maybe bit by bit as we can. And I think we look forward, all of us, to seeing that eventually happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
All right. I'm going to turn to the audience again. Actually, to help things out a little bit, I'm going to ask for those of you who'd like to speak to sit in either this chair or that chair, and that will help me process who wants to talk next rather than me choosing. So I'll start with right over here. Hello, hello.
As we all play musical chairs. Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Phil. My name is Jen Hopi-Ferguson, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Nanaimo Child Development Center. And I'm going to read a brief statement here, but I'm going to just share with you the reason for me being here, and I did submit online as well, Phil, so just in case you have that question coming up later, related to inclusive play spaces. So research shows that the opportunity to play together bonds families and builds healthy social development. And I'll suggest that this falls under priority 3 as well as priority 5. So the sport, tourism, culture component as well as the healthy communities component. Of the 200 plus parks that we have in Nanaimo, and I think from a recruitment perspective, when I was with tourism, certainly it was something we celebrated. We talk about it actively. We talk about active living and being out and being active in the community. Only 4 of our parks are deemed to be wheelchair accessible, and that does not cover the breadth of what accessibility means to the community. They are not, it doesn't take into account physical or other developments, and not one of them offers an inclusive play space for children and adults, or both, with special needs. How does Council plan to investigate and integrate inclusive play, and by that I mean recreation spaces, into the recreation priorities and capital investment plan for the City of Nanaimo? So I'm going to leave you with one quote before, if I may. Access gets someone in. And I think that's the difference between talking about an accessible play area or an accessible play space, or families and grandparents and those, perhaps somebody with MS, or it could be somebody with a developmental delay or somebody confined to a wheelchair, can come together and play together with their family. That bonds them together. Inclusion drives engagement, and it also drives active participation. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much, Jen. Really appreciate you coming. It's interesting because you asked the question, or you made a question. You said, how do we intend to improve in inclusive playground? And we went 4 out of 200.
And those are accessible. And I use the term in quotes in terms of that it's wide enough to accommodate a wheelchair. It is not accessible to all. It is not accessible to somebody in a walker, for example, or with a mobility issue, or with, unaccompanied.
Thank you. So that in itself, using the example of going back to what are we going to do about local agriculture and so on and so forth, awareness, doing exactly what you're doing right now at Departure Bay. The improvements there have become now wheelchair accessible that perhaps wasn't in the past. As our city grows and as we become more modern and more aware. But by doing what you're doing right now, coming and challenging and say, hey, what the hell are you going to do about this community? Did you know that you only have 4? I didn't. I did not know that. And I'm not pleading ignorance, or I did not know that. And now you've just brought shame to me for 4 out of 200. Well, I feel a lot of shame right now in hearing that. And so now when we go back to the drawing board and we go back to the whiteboard and we go back to hey guys, what did you hear? What did you learn from our eTown hall? And this has an asterisk beside it for me, for whatever that means, because you brought something that makes me go, oh my God, you're kidding. And now we need to hopefully be able to put ourselves in a position for this council or a future one to start putting the wheels in motion to make 4, increase it by 100% in the next 2 years. Or give ourselves some goals and some challenges. So I know Parks and Rec staff are here. I know development staff are here. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
I just wanted to say thank you, and I totally agree with Councillor Bestwick. I think that raising awareness really, really makes all the difference. That's what this is all about. That's exactly what this is all about, this eTown hall. We've heard several times tonight already about accessibility and providing proper access. We've heard it in our council meetings. We really do need to get serious about how we're going to do this rather than just say, yeah, we should do it. Of course, everybody should have access. And to say that we have 200 parks and only 4 of them are accessible, that's not good enough. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. As Councillor Bestwick said, now that you've raised our awareness, it's something we will be talking about.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Well, in the spirit of raising awareness, which 4?
That's a great question, and I don't have all of that in front of me, but I can tell you Westwood Lake is one of them, and that is specific to the ramp that's wide enough from a fishing pier perspective for folks to be able to fish from. Sorry, I didn't write it all down, but it's a wheelchair accessibility. That was the lens that was used to deem those 4 parks to be accessible.
And it would be fully accessible or partially accessible?
Partially accessible.
Okay, yeah,
so wood chips on the ground, so you can access. You can get into the park area, but you can't necessarily. So for some, let's say a parent or a grandparent who is confined, let's say to a wheelchair, couldn't wheel themselves into that play space. So the ability to route and turn around and play with their kids with wood chips, or if they were in a walker, for example, would be compromised or very difficult to do.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things is determining what accessibility really means. A lot of our parks are nature parks. Colliery Dam, for example, some of it is accessible with wheelchairs, actually the lower part primarily and part of the wooded areas, but some of it likely will never be because you've got stairways, et cetera, So how accessible can we make them? We need to do a heck of a lot better, like you're saying, and like everybody on council is saying. We have to do better.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I'll just add that there is a fishing wharf at Long Lake that was built for disability access, and it was advanced by the disability community, one young fellow in particular. So that's one more. But now the staff can correct me on this if I've got it wrong, but I think that on our long list of capital priorities that we could have chosen, one of them was one of the beach kind of mats that rolls out to allow wheelchair access to the beach. And so it is something that we have talked about. It is on the radar, not necessarily way up here yet, but with the commitment we're hearing at the table tonight, maybe that's something that will get stronger consideration in the next budget. And I know that our Parks and Rec director is here and probably knows what I'm talking about in terms of that list. So,
may I clarify if that's okay? When I say inclusive park, as opposed to accessible, I just want to be careful that I'm clear about what I'm suggesting and requesting. And that is, inclusive parks are spaces where, and Councillor Fuller, your point is well taken in terms of we do have a lot of nature parks, and I'm not suggesting we make amendments to those. However, I do think that there's a place for an inclusive playground. And so let me give you an example. That would be a big swing that would accommodate a wheelchair, maybe 2, in addition to able-bodied folks or folks who could make their own way into that swing area. It's a wide slide that would allow somebody with a physical or developmental delay or somebody who's unable to go down that slide on their own to go with a parent or a guardian or a grandparent or a friend. It allows kids and families who have folks that have a disability in their family, whether it's developmental or physical, and of any age, to participate and play together. It's about being active and being healthy and enjoying that bonding time together. So I just want to be clear about what I'm suggesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. About inclusive and universal design, even in our housing projects, we should be asking for 10% of this type of housing for those that have some form of physical disability or disability. And when you talk about these parks, it is having the ability to get on a swing or a rope swing with someone that is in either a wheelchair or needs an active device to walk with. I think the other thing people need to do, every able-bodied person should hop into a wheelchair and roll around for a while. At the Aquatic Center in Nanaimo, one of our newer buildings, and it's hard to get in and out. We just put a lift in at Frank Crane after 20-something years. And we've been looking for a button there. When the kids are all in the coffee shop at there, the others can't get through the door to the bathroom, and we're trying to get those things moved along. So I think part about education is hugely important. Hop in a wheelchair for up somewhere and see how tough it is. Thank you. And it's you bringing it forward, Jen. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Not to belabor this, Jen, but if you could please help to make our job easier, and I'm sure you have examples.
I do.
Thank you. So could you
I will
please
forward those.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I let you go, I just wanted to say as well that somebody, after the long weekend that we just had with Bathtub Festival, sent me a great picture. It was interesting how it all came about, but it happened to be them, and his wife had said, "I want to go to Departure Bay and I want to go swimming tonight." And so she sent a picture, and I realized that she went swimming in Departure Bay, and it's someplace that's within 10 minutes of most homes in the community. And it really struck me when you spoke that we're missing the boat with respect to what Councillor Brennan was saying. We're missing the boat on making this an inclusive community for everyone from 8 to 80 and all forms and all abilities to be able to participate in the community's highlights just like everyone else can. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooper.
All right, I'll take another question from the audience.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My question relates to 1, 2, 4, and 5, and probably fits in the category 3 as well. Especially in regards to number 1, the South Development Waterfront, one of the things that we need a communication with Nanaimo First Nations. Has City Council to date met with their council as requested a few months ago? And if not, is there a plan?
Thank you. I'm going to let Councillor Pratt answer that question as she's on the Protocol Action Working Group.
I'll just move over here while you answer.
Sure. I think that there is a huge commitment on the part of the City of Nanaimo to work with Nanaimo First Nations, and I believe that they believe we are working well with them at this point in time. I'm on the Protocol Agreement Working Group, and we are meeting regularly and having some very in-depth conversations relative to not only how they want to move forward, but how we move forward together. And so I do believe this is something that we are taking very seriously, and I know from the work that I've been involved with that it is moving forward. And we have met as a council on several occasions, and most recently was about 3 weeks ago? Less than 3 weeks ago. We had a whole evening together, and there was a lot of frank discussion during that meeting, and I think we are moving forward in a very productive way. Lots more to do.
Thank you.
Oh, Your Worship.
Councillor Cutt.
There were staff meetings involved too between city staff and Nanaimo staff too, working on these development plans, not only for the South Down waterfront, but all of our initiatives too, to look at how we engage First Nations and a more appropriate engagement.
Thank you. Next question.
All right, this is a question from our website, and its focus is on public safety. That's the priority. And the question reads, and it's a technical question, I might add, what is the nuisance designation program, and what are its goals and procedures? Is it for messy nuisances or criminal nuisances? And what is the outcome for owners?
Thank you. I wonder if we can get some staff help on this as well. But I'd like to start on that. Councillor Fuller.
Nuisance means an activity which substantially and unreasonably interferes with a person's use and enjoyment of a public area or of land he or she occupies, or which causes injury to the health, comfort, or convenience of an occupier of land, and ... It's on the city website. You can pull up the nuisance property bylaw. It's bylaw number 5645, and it goes through. It's not a hugely extensive bylaw, and what it does is, if a property is declared nuisance, it puts the onus on the owner of the property to take care of that. Otherwise, they will be charged costs associated with the RCMP attending, ambulance attending, fire attending. There's a whole list of costs. A platoon captain for Nanaimo Fire Rescue would cost the owner $44 per hour that person is there. Engineering Public Works manager, $57.50. It's actually a fairly interesting bylaw. The problem I've found with it in the past is that there's no real guidelines on how it is going to be determined, because you get a number of complaints and then you really have to push to get it determined a nuisance property. There isn't a set number of complaints, a set number of times the RCMP has to arrive. It varies. And I think we really need to look at it and make those concrete distinctions that if the RCMP attend a house 15 times in a year, then it comes before a council as a nuisance property, instead of some coming at 8, some coming at 30. So, but it's primarily designed in that manner. I hope I answered the question. I love our city website. I can find stuff on it.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to that that part of the definition of nuisance properties include either activities that are on the property. They can be illegal activities such as excessive, or pardon me, drugs, production of drugs, public safety predominantly, and also not items of activities that are not that don't fall into those. They can be excessive partying. They can be appearance issues, properties that have burned out buildings on them, or they're unkempt, or there's major collection of garbage and debris and so on and so forth. Anything that brings down the quality of life for the neighbors that live around that property. Thank you. Next question.
All right. Far end.
Thank you very much, Philip. Kim Smythe, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. How are you all doing tonight? Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm not going to speak to a specific strategic priority initiative. I'm going to talk to the whole set of them, and I'm also going to speak about the process that we're involved in now to get to this point in time. I'm just going to set my timer so I keep mindful of where I am. The Chamber of Commerce is here tonight to comment on the city's strategic plan update and its process to arrive at the update, and to comment on the plans to move ahead with Council's stated priorities, projects, and initiatives which were adopted on July 11th. The Chamber agrees with Council that it has chosen the most cost-effective methods to move forward with the strategic priorities while paving the easiest path to positive progress in our city. Projects that have been stuck in discussion and study for what seemed like years now appear as much more realistic targets on a foreseeable horizon. In staff's report to Council on June 27th, a series of community values are cited at the core of strategic planning. Between 2011 and 2012, the city undertook extensive community consultation to identify the community's vision, mission, philosophies, and values. At the same time, the Chamber of Commerce, with its community partners, we're going through a community and public engagement process to identify how to help Nanaimo become a more successful city. Many of you participated in those exercises, which we carried out for more than 18 months at that point in time. The Chamber-led consultation was added to the input that produced the city's 2012-2015 strategic plan. The summary of successful cities' conclusions and recommendations was incorporated to that plan in 2012. And if you reference the plan, the first reference to it is on page 10 of the original strategic plan, and then it goes forward and is integrated in further places throughout the strategic plan. The summary of successful cities' conclusions and recommendations was incorporated in 2012. Our own community consultations at that time more than doubled the diverse input to the city's 2012 to 2015 vision and strategic plan. I have the description or the definition of successful cities showing on the screen. I'm going to quickly go through those 12 elements that describe a successful city. I won't get into detail with them. Number one, connectivity, something that we at the Chamber find especially important, because when we have people coming to Nanaimo from cities, other cities, investigating and possibly moving their business, moving their homes, the fact that we are so close to everything else, that we can move around so easily, that we have so many points of contact with cities outside of Nanaimo is a huge point. Spoke to collaboration. We see a great deal of collaboration going on now. We see collaboration in this room tonight. We spoke to innovation. Spoke to distinctiveness. We talked about entrepreneurial governance, which we're seeing. We're talking about master planning and community design. Quality education, so essential to where we are and what we do, especially in this community, where so much of our economy and our activity depends on the school district and VIU. We talked about quality of life. High quality of life attracts investment, people, and innovation, key to our successful future. Talked about livability. We identified social conscience as being very important to our community. Included sustainability, something that this council is working on as we move forward. We talked about a vibrant economy, something that we are working on, the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation is working on. So just to address to you and remind you that Inspire Nanaimo was the organization that became the legacy organization of our work on successful cities, and it is a tripartite organization made up of the managing partners, Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, Vancouver Island University, and of course the City of Nanaimo. So we're happy to see that so much of what we had done in successful cities carries through. And we really want to see a commitment by Council to continue to stay with these philosophies, to commit to the philosophies, to continue to integrate them in your strategic plan going forward. So it wasn't really a question, it was a plea to Council. Can you stay with this? Can you stick with it? And we thought it was a fantastic contribution to the community at that time. And if anybody wants more information on it, there's the website address right there. I thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bestwick, do you have questions for the delegation?
Yes, please. Real quick, Kim, thanks very much for coming forward. How many members are on the Inspire Nanaimo? I apologize, I don't know how many members.
It's rather fluid. We've gone through a couple of different incarnations with Inspire, trying to find out where it's going to fit at what it's going to do. We didn't want to be another organization that established monthly meetings of fixed individuals and then had to go someplace to find a budget to do things. We're more of a thinking organization that tries to find inspiring things that are happening in the community or create inspiring things to happen in the community. And then we work with other organizations in the community to put those into place. So at any given time, there's maybe 10, 12 of us that meet to discuss these things. Sometimes it gets a little bit bigger, sometimes it's a little bit smaller. But at the core, of course, is the city, the chamber, and university.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next question.
All right, there's a gentleman here. You're welcome to come on up. Me first.
Can take it. Excuse me.
Hi there, June Ross, and thank you for holding the eTown Hall. I've got a couple of questions and I guess a bit of a comment as well. I'm wondering what it means in number 2, recreation, culture, sports, and tourism, when it talks about provide a major boost to downtown revitalization by supporting the creation of a sports and entertainment center. What does that mean, supporting?
Councillor Bestwick.
Well, I'll do my very best to try to provide you with what I believe to this point in time to be support. And in that is support means that it's on our list to investigate a sports and entertainment center possibility with, and I think somebody mentioned something in one of our questions here that we all have online, be it private, public, or a partnership, or a combination thereof. So when we're doing our inventories, and this is, I think everything that we're doing, everything that is on this list of 5 and the list of 100, and it's a fluid list, is forever changing and forever a work in progress. And the work in progress is to identify how do we provide entertainment, sports and recreation, arts and culture, private and public, for that QOL thing that was just up there a minute ago, the quality of life. And the quality of life in a broad scope of how we can best invest in our own city while using private people and private properties, and what is it that we need to do first, second, and third, fourth, and fifth. And if one of those things is to inspire a private-public partnership that invests private money, public money in a major project that will, in my opinion, and I make no apologies for my affinity for sports and entertainment, and I don't think anybody should make any apologies for what their passions are, that a sports and entertainment complex which engages culture and arts and fine arts and kids and grandkids and
I realize all
is
of
a
that,
draw.
Bill. I realize all of that, but I'm wondering what it means to support. Does it mean that it's a taxpayer that is going to have to pay even a portion of it? Would it then go to referendum?
Sure.
Would it go to referendum? That's all I want to know.
I don't know. We're not at that stage yet where we're going to be able to commit how much money is going to be spent or not be spent, or whether it's a referendum or not a referendum. This is at the high level of, this would be asking me the question, how much money are you going to spend on the waterfront walkway improvement down at the South Downtown Waterfront Initiative, and what is it, by the way?
I wasn't asking for an amount. I was just asking what support meant. Did it mean then that it's the taxpayer?
We're going to try to attract private development to bring forward a proposal that we can disseminate and determine whether it is an attractive proposition or not an attractive proposition. But we're not there yet. Just for an example, Frank Crane Arena, Bevan Park Recreation Center, is nearing 50 years old. So at some point in time, whether we agree with sports, or I don't like hockey, or there's too many rinks, or whatever, at some point in time, we have to start thinking about replacing Frank Crane Arena. So whether we pay for it, or whether the private people pay for it, or whether it's a combination, we better start thinking about it, because in 3 years, it's 50 years old and tired. And there's no entertainment going on there. And there's no activities going on there, and it's a 2,240-seat arena that started out at 2,755 seats in 1974. So fast forward to 2016, nothing gets built in the next 3 to 4 years. 2020, we're 50 years old, and if we wonder why entertainment and activities and trade shows and boat shows and home shows and conventions and all of those things are skipping Nanaimo, it's not the only thing, and it's not the only reason, but it's part of it, and we have to replace those facilities. Recreation is a mandate that we have to replace them at some point in time. So where is it specifically in terms of the financial commitment and who's paying? Those are the things that we have to roll up our sleeves and work real hard on to ensure that the taxpayer pays less and not more. Those are the things that we have to really work hard on. And that is, I can tell you right now, that's what I'm committed to. If we build whatever it is that we build, if we build another rehearsal hall, Port Theatre over here, I want us to build a rehearsal hall over here. We dedicated $4 million to that. We have $4 million on the books to build that rehearsal hall. I sure hope that the private or the operator with their private counterparts can raise the monies so we can provide that $4 million and build that. I hope we can attract people that feel as passionate about the city of Nanaimo as you and I do, that we can attract them to invest in Nanaimo, in that area being sports and entertainment and recreation and everything else that goes along with it. I hope we can find a partner. And finding partners to dance with when you're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars isn't an easy task. It's challenging. So will you be updated when we're updated? Absolutely, 100%.
Better be. Thanks. Thank you for the explanation. Anybody else?
We've got other speakers yet. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. There's not too much I can add to that, but thanks for the question, Ms. Ross. I guess I would answer your specific question by saying, in my mind, the word supporting means investigating. And that's where we're at right now. This whole process has been a process of identifying visions of individuals and a council as a collective. And it's been a process of looking ahead and trying to determine where we want to see our city going in the future. And this idea of a sports and entertainment center has been talked about and kicked around for a long time. We decided to put it on paper as something that we might be interested in investigating, because eventually maybe we want to go there. Do we know if it's going to cost X amount of dollars? No, we don't right now. Do we know if there's partners that are going to be interested in that project? Hopefully there will be, but we're not at that point yet. Is the community interested in this project? Hopefully, from my point of view, hopefully they are. But we're not even at that point yet. So it's the idea we want to put it on paper. It's an exciting concept that some of us at least, and I think most of us, see as a vision for the future. We want to investigate those possibilities. So beyond that, it's not specific. That will all come, and there will be plenty of opportunity for your comments and feedback as we proceed.
I was just going to say investigate would have been a better word to have used than to support. I wouldn't have been up here.
And that's just my word, and others might not agree with me, but that's what I would suggest.
Okay.
Councillor Fuller.
One of the biggest mistakes we ever made in this town was when we were building this place and we decided to rip out the Civic Arena, which was a 5,000-seat arena that was used for concerts, used for skating. Huh?
It was only about 1,000.
Was it? Okay, it was a big arena that was used for concerts, skating, rollerblading, you name it, it was used for it. And it was tore out simply because we were going to put up a couple of massive condo towers down at Mafia Sutton Park. So sadly, that would have served a bit of a purpose up until now when we have this idea. Everybody knows that Howard Johnson has put out a thing saying that they might be interested in doing something. Well, it doesn't matter whether it's the Howard Johnsons or anybody else who's interested in doing it. They likely will need the support of the city, whether that's through tax write-offs. I'm not sure if they're included in the DCC thing. So those are some ways that we could support. Are we going to do a $72 million or a $52 million that expands to $72 million that expands ultimately to a $100 million commitment on the part of the city? I don't think so. I think we made that mistake once. And
Not without a referendum, anyway.
Yeah, and I don't think a referendum would go through again. However, you know how that one worked. We didn't think it would go through with this, and it did. So So there's lots of different ways we can support it without having to funnel mass quantities of monies and taxpayer dollars into it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. I don't want to dance on a specific word, whether we support it or whether we investigate it or whether we do research on it. But what it means is that we have to do work on it. So we might come back and say we don't support it because it might be too expensive. It might be, who knows? But whether we support it or investigate it or research it, I think we have to do all of those things. Because if we're not going to support it, then let's not put it on there. If we're not going to support investigating and researching how we might be able to find ourselves in the 21st century, like every other city in the province with over 90,000 people in it, then we need to start thinking about that stuff. Because if we don't start thinking about it and researching it, investigating it, see how much it might cost in 5 or 10 years, or whether, we can't go backwards, so we better figure something out, how we might be able to address a replacement. This is a replacement. We're going to have to replace Frank Crane Arena. Frank Crane Arena isn't staying there forever. And Civic Arena was 1,640 seats, and it accommodated about 2,200 people for an event in the downtown core on a very small footprint, which somewhere near its 50th birthday, we banged her down. And we could have used that floor space. Trust me, we could have used that floor space in the last 10 years since it's been taken out. But nonetheless, it's research, investigation, and to determine whether it fits into our scheme of priorities.
I understand now, Bill. I understand. I just wanted to know what support meant, because that's
research and investigate the opportunity.
That's fine.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Under number 5, community wellness, in infrastructure, does that also include our drinking watershed?
I don't know why it wouldn't.
Do you have any more questions, ma'am?
Yes, I've got one more comment here. Back in this document, there's a whole area called environmental responsibility. That wording is absolutely superb, and yet under the governance removal, the new committee structure removed an environmental committee, and I think that's a very bad mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Just on the structure of the committees, an interesting one. A long time ago, and I've helped with some of these, the Social Planning Committee and the Environment Committee. What I always found with them, and why I support this idea of spreading the environment, getting them out of one little caucus where they speak to the converted every day in their little caucus, because they're all very environmentally sensitive. Now they're going to speak to people with a different mentality or a different sort of cultural design. They're going to sit with the social planners, and they're going to have environment people there, and they're going to have development people there. So they can talk about the whole spectrum of our community in that context. So that's one of the reasons where I support it. So by this talk about we're dismantling the Environment Committee and dismantling these, no, we're starting to embed them into all of the organizations. So we're embedding the view of environment. We're embedding the view of social planning. We're embedding those in other communities that didn't even care that environment was on it. When I talked with the Development Process Review Committee, we talked a little bit about environment. There wasn't an environmental person there. So I think people have got hung up on a couple of points or a few people's comment that we're destroying the Environment Committee. My gosh, I don't think anybody at this table wants to. I want environment in every thought pattern we do. I want it in development services. I want it in transportation. I want it in social planning. I want it in the theater group. So that's, to me, we're not just blanking out, closing down the environment. We're embedding it in every part of our operation. And to me, that's my point on when I hear that we're closing them down.
Just to finish off then, Jim, thank you for that. I don't agree that you're embedding. What you're doing is diluting. You're diluting a committee that was operating very well, and instead of taking that committee and using them with the other departments, what you've done is diminished their voice.
Well, again, I would suggest, I haven't seen a lot of reports come from the Environment Committee that had massive impact on us. We've been waiting for the sustainability checklist. I think I was on the committee 4 years ago, and it still hasn't made the table. And that's what's a problem to me. Those committees work great within themselves. They function great. Everybody's a buddy. They go out, and it didn't get deeper into the organization. So it's a change for me that is very well received, in my view. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
I kind of like the way that this committee is going to be formed, and I'll give you an example of why I like it. Passive housing. It's the most environmentally friendly form of housing that you can do. The first one that we will have that I know of in this city is an affordable housing complex. Wait a minute, social planning. My God. You're involving the environment and social planning. So it can work. You can actually accomplish things. There's a group that I believe June is very well aware of, the Vancouver Island Water Watch. I believe they have done far more in this community and on Vancouver Island for issues around water and drinking water and other issues with regards to water than our environmental committee ever did. So when we can look at bringing in groups like Vancouver Island Water Watch to these broader groups, when we do look at the environmental issues, I think we're way ahead of the game. Down the road, we may find it doesn't work and we may go back to it, but that's the whole thing with the process. We're doing it, and we're going to get some good stuff out of it, and I see the passive housing as being the first one.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Oh, no, it was off.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just if I might offer my 2 bits worth, like not unlike the social planning department that really has one member of staff in it that carries a huge load, and social planning maybe 10 or 12 or however many years ago may only have deserved 1 or 2 or members of staff. And it was about 5 years ago. And now I think when we get into this next budget cycle, that we're going to be talking about staffing levels, and we're going to be talking about the core services review, and we're going to be talking about how they indicate to us that we may wish to beef up certain areas. And I think that we can get a lot of mileage out of increased staffing levels in certain areas that warrant it, that we need it because we have some shortcomings and maybe intel and all kinds of good things that can come out of it. And I don't think that the environment is any different. I don't think that we have perhaps enough staff in the environment department. And there was, not long ago, we had a full-time environment officer. And not long ago, a previous council chose to remove it. And then with pressure came back as half-time. And so things change, times change. I can tell you right now, and I won't, that the argument that was provided why we could get rid of an environmental officer is because the developers were going to be able to use QEPs. Quality professionals reports on riparians and bird nests, and we don't need our guy. We're just going to have the developers go out and bring back their report, and that's what's that signed off, that's good enough. Well, as far as I am concerned, yeah, we do need our own environment officer, maybe in plural, and maybe we better roll up our sleeves and invest more money in that department. And I can tell you right now that I didn't feel any differently when it was taken away. So through time, through change, through bad experiences, through good or bad decisions, everything is fluid and everything on balance. And here we are, And I think we have a great opportunity as we're going into this next budget cycle, and that's why these events are so important. And people want to come and talk to us and add more police and add more fire and add this and add that. Well, I'd like to do it all. But on balance, there will only be certain things we can do. And I think one of the very first speakers that came up said, we won't be able to do all of this fast enough. Guarantee it. But as long as we're moving in the right direction, that is what's important. Because then the community is going to see us, we're going to build confidence that we're moving in the right direction on all of these things, but we're not going to be able to do them all to 100% capacity all at once.
Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. I just wanted to state that the environmental subject, coming from my previous role in population, and being a Nanaimo member, is coming from a background where your environmental concerns were not heard, surrounded by booms and mills and this and that. So I get the environmental concern, the lack of drinking water out there in IR out in Cedar, IR 2, 3, and 4, no drinking water until recent years of trucking in water. So I get the water concerns. I get the lack of basically being disrespected and mistreated in environmental concerns. So I would not sit here and put a blind eye to environmental concerns. I think we're strengthening it by putting in all the committees, and I like Councillor Bestwick's comments around maybe we do need some environment officers again. I wasn't aware they used to have them here. So I just want to touch on that, those couple points, and some of the language. And since we did a community restructuring, it was about like we're not concerned about the environment, or some of us aren't concerned about the environment, is absolutely false. And I'm definitely going to advocate and make sure the environment's implemented in all our committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I think we do need an environmental policy or an environmental committee. The reason I think that is because if you look at the record of the environmental committee, you'll find that one of our most important environmental documents is our sustainability policy. And that was tasked to the committee, and the committee came back with an excellent sustainability policy, which we use in the city on a regular basis to help us guide us along in our development. The federal government made some changes to streams and river protections that we as a municipality said in our environmental committee, this policy that the federal government has made is leaving our streams at risk. So we came to council, and council directed that committee to develop a riparian policy. They worked with the staff members here, they worked with developers, and they worked with the QUEEPs, as Bill was saying, the biologists who do the work for the developers. We talked to them and we found certain things. We found that sometimes those QUEEPs felt a little bit constrained in the kinds of recommendations they could make. And they wished that they had broader powers. They didn't have them. So our committee put together a riparian policy. We took it to the committee of the developers who were looking for ways to speed up development so that it didn't take so long, and to get rid of obstacles. We took this riparian policy to them, and the first time we took it to them, they were prepared to endorse it. So that it was a really good way of smoothing out relationships and working relationships between what may have been seen as opposing factions. I think that, and the other thing that came out of the riparian policy was a recommendation that the city hire back the biologist in the bylaw department. So we did that, so we beefed that up so that, because people didn't have trust in a QUEEP who was hired by a developer to say, yeah, this is good, go with it. They wanted an independent set of eyes and set of skills to look at that development plan and say, yeah, I think maybe the QUIP is right in this area, but I think it should be strengthened here. And people have more faith when it's an independent biologist looking at a questionable piece. Not to say that they don't have faith in the QUIPs, as they are, but when you would bring in our biologist when there was questions. I think that when you take one person and plunk them down on a committee whose specific focus is not the environment, then their weight is reduced. The weight that they have to make changes and to hold the city's feet to the fire is reduced. We know that, we use that word tokenism in all sorts of different areas when we think that having an individual represent a point of view on a committee of 10 other people is not going to be successful. That's why I think that we do require a standalone environmental committee. And I thank Ms. Ross for asking that question, because I think it gave me an opportunity to put my thoughts together and to outline why I think that it's essential that we carry on with an environmental committee, because when you have individuals sitting on a committee that they don't know much about and trying to make a point of view take hold, is more difficult than you have a group of people brainstorming, putting together a solid piece of work, present it to the city and say, this is where we need to go in our environmental work. And the city will generally accept that. But it was one lonely little person, one lonely little green person, calling out, in my view, into what could be the wilderness. It's not going to work, and it's going to hurt us, because people come to this island, they come to Nanaimo specifically because of our environment.
Thank you, Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I don't actually see that as a view. I think that the Environment Committee is a strong committee. If you have an A-team committee, why not spread those people to other committees to make sure that those committees have a point of view that they don't traditionally see? And we do look at everything that's related to the environment. That is a key for Nanaimo. It is a selling feature. Developers know that. The design panel, when we make deliberations on design, we look at those things. And now that if you're going to put some other people that are from the environment into these committees, it's still in the forefront. It's constantly reminded. It's not 1/10 of a person. I will listen to everybody's point of view. And if they tell me it enough over and over again, it will get into me. I might butt heads, but I will absorb it. And they do make good points. So having that, I don't see it's going to be a problem. If there is some issues that we want, it's council's discussion and our discretion that, hey, let's strike a select committee. Let's form some people. Let's find out what we can do to solve this environmental issue, if we have this issue, like water. Something comes up, we have the right and the discretion to form this to get an answer that we need. So it's not like the options are gone. They're still there. Thanks.
Thank you. So I wanted to suggest to council that looks as though we're getting some second-time speakers here, that we're here to try to answer the question of the person that came to the podium. So if there's any other further answers to the question that was at the podium as opposed to a debate, okay, we've got other questions.
Yeah, we've got other questions here.
Can we have the next question, please?
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation for public input. I think it's welcome, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. So I'm a Nanaimo resident, and I envision myself continuing to live in Nanaimo, and I think that there are many things that we can improve on in the city, but I'm wanting to focus primarily on agriculture because That's how I make my living, and we have a really big opportunity to rebuild the agricultural economy on Vancouver Island because we have a year-round growing climate. And agriculture is something that has the greatest potential to heal many of the faults we've, created. So food is something we all have in common, but we've become kind of complacent because access to food has become easy in the grocery stores. I value Nanaimo for prioritizing health and wellness, but I would like to invite local food to be considered as one of the most important aspects of community development and public health. So food as public health. As mentioned by Councillor Beswick, planning for sustainable agriculture is a complicated task, and it will require multifaceted approaches. So it's the access to land, access to water, access to making a living wage, and ability to earn a living. The city could help on several of these factors through municipally supported agricultural policy. And I recently went to a workshop where some council members from the city of Richmond were attending. And Richmond is doing some really amazing things with their agricultural policy. They're buying up land, and they're making 1 acre parcels available to lease to small-scale farmers. And myself personally, I know I could earn an income on 1 acre of land, and 1 acre of land can feed approximately 15 people if it's intensively grown agriculture. And also on these municipally supported agricultural plots, the city is able to get carbon credits from trees being planted, and it goes into the ALR, so it's tax status. And on some of these plots, they're doing cross-pollinating with other things, so with like housing and education and marketing. And right now we're growing a raw product. We're growing vegetables to go to market, and if we could grow vegetables to go to a kitchen to be value added to go to market, then we could get potentially 10 times more value from some of our food, and then we could start exporting it. And because we have a year-round growing climate, we could just start opening up more and more farm sites, and this thing would kind of snowball. But right now, we're kind of at the saving agriculture stage. There are so few farmers involved, and the challenges of access to land and ability to earn a living are kind of the barriers. So if there is an initial support where land is offered, and there can be all sorts of different partnerships through not-for-profits, partnerships with the university, summer programs where a job is created for a farmer to bring kids, agricultural tourism. There are so many different things. And what I really appreciate about Nanaimo is it's small enough of a city that groups of people can make big changes. And so myself and our farming colleagues and our friends, we're always thinking, okay, what does Nanaimo need? How can we make the city better? If we're going to live here, we want it to be a great place to live. So we're excited to get more involved with civic politics because, federal politics, Ottawa's far away. And you guys are like, here we are having a conversation. So I think that's kind of all I wanted to say. I mean, I could go off. Oh, and then Nanaimo could have a food security officer. How about that for a job? A food security officer. Which is a new position.
Viha.
Thank you. I just wanted to say to you that Richmond's done a wonderful job of preserving their agricultural heritage. Over 50% of that municipality is still agricultural, and they very much, despite all of the development. If you were to take, and that's a novel idea, if you were to take that 1 acre plot in Richmond, could you afford to live there too? Could you afford to live in Richmond off the income off of a 1 acre plot?
Well, that's why I live in Nanaimo.
Thank you.
That's why I choose to live in Nanaimo. There's another thing. I wanted to thank everyone for the work that's going on towards the year-round market in Nanaimo. in order for us to build capacity, we need that market, because right now we're basically bringing it and setting it up 3 days a week. And if we had just a space we could keep it and it was available to the public 6 or 7 days a week, we'd do so much better, so quick.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks for coming. Quickly, what is your number one crop? What is it that you do better than anybody else? What do you do best?
Rainbow carrots.
Rainbow carrots.
Garlic.
Like 12 months of the year.
Well, we're a market gardener, so we're working with the seasonal cycle. So right now it's full on, everything's ready. But in the winter there are 40 or 50 different things that we could still have growing. Plus, if there was a space where we could store our food, like all our squash and roots and garlic, and then we could store it for the winter, if there was a facility for us to store it properly.
That's another conversation.
We're like working on, we've got a 90-year-old barn that's our main workspace, it's like you said, the public infrastructure here needs restoration, and so does agriculture,
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Farmer Brown. I appreciate what you do. Thanks for coming forward. Urban gardens are a concern for me when we put a limit of the size of them. You can have 100% of your yard in grass, but only 25% vegetables. That always shocked me. I didn't like that we did. What help do you need with water and water supplies and the cost of water? That's our most important resource, without a doubt. It's expensive. Everybody wants it, but farms need it. Do we need? Is there any place like Richmond special pricing for water supply, assistance with water gathering, like giving you metal sheds, metal roof, hold the rainwater, put it back into the system as you can when you need it? What type of help do you see? Like from a municipal point of view, we're trying to get down to what our legislated services are so that we know what there are. Our mandatory services from the government. Our discretionary services is where we have some flexibility. And of course, we have foundational work, fire, police, and those. And I think food needs to be a foundational thing on Vancouver Island. Do you know of any places that are giving discounts for farmers for water, helping with infrastructure for water collection or anything like that? Or if you don't know, you can help us search those out.
I don't really know. I know a lot of water is grandfathered into land usage, and my friend who's an urban farmer uses city water, but he uses it sparingly because he has to pay for it. So
that's what I mean. For growing, you need water, and if it becomes too expensive for the farmer to grow with the water, then we're in a problem.
So this could be something that the city could offer for agriculture, but also for sustainable initiatives, tax breaks on cisterns and infrastructural upgrades to be more water smart. So that's the whole cross-pollination thing, because we need, it's not just one thing, it's many things all working together to support each other to bring everyone up.
And root cellars. You need a massive root cellar.
If there was a community food storage space, we're part of what we're dreaming for this.
Go bust into
this
the
market.
Defen bunker. Go open up that Defen bunker. That thing's still there. It's a huge concrete structure that's sitting there closed, underground, 3 stories. Sits there, federal. Make a great bunker of food.
Thank you. I can see no further questions for you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooper, we're getting to the end of our evening.
The timeline for the broadcast is for 9 o'clock. At your discretion, you're welcome to continue this beyond 9.
Okay. What is council's will? Okay. Carry on. And for how much longer? Another hour?
I recommend.
Okay, so we need a motion to go beyond our predetermined time. So can we have a motion for something? Councillor Yoakum.
Make that motion.
What motion is that, Councillor?
In my motion, I'd like to have a time frame of whatever time frame the council agrees on, but also a rescheduled one ASAP.
Okay.
If that makes sense. It wasn't very articulately said, so make a motion to carry on tonight. but also to reschedule another town hall meeting. Actually, let's get to this one. I'll make another motion after this one.
Okay, so
yeah,
there's a motion on the floor to continue with no time frame.
I heard Jim say an hour.
Sure.
Is there a seconder required?
So at this point, we've got no seconder for an hour. Do we have another motion? Okay.
I'll second that.
Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Beswick. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Your Worship?
We'll carry on.
Yeah. Just would like to point out that there's one agenda item, the city's representative to the Nanaimo Port Authority. She's been here since 6:30 waiting to speak, so maybe at 9:15 she can do her presentation if there's not a lineup of people.
Certainly. As it stands right now, we've got a motion on the floor that's been passed for 9:30 though.
Okay.
Councillor Yocum.
Just quickly, I don't know if this be a motion or just direction. I'd like to make just a suggestion to have another town hall e-meeting ASAP, but also at various locations around the city, at like say where we got facilities, and have that true town hall feeling. Besides out of this type of setting, thank you, and sooner than later, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
All right, I'm going to ask the lady at the far end there to finish up the wait she's been on.
Hi. Okay, a lot of people care here tonight, and I know you guys have a hard job with such a variety of people and ideas in Nanaimo. I'm going to go a little bit big picture. When I looked at your strategic plan update, you first mentioned the community values, and then when I looked at the council priorities and saw 2, recreation, culture, sports, and tourism, the thing that I am most concerned about and I see a lack of is fair, geographically equitable neighborhood parks, because they're just not equally spread throughout the city. Of course, they're not equally spread where I live in Harewood. I clean houses, and every time I look on Google Map for some home I haven't been to before, I see green space, green space, green space, green space. It's like they're surrounded by green spaces in the North End. If you guys are dreaming big here, nice aspirations, and I know that this is what this is about. You can't say, yes, we're going to give you 4 parks in this neighborhood, and we're going to give you wheelchair accessibility, and we're going to move this bus stop. I know you guys can't say definitely all these things are going to be done, but I just want to point out that neighborhood parks for everybody, where you can just walk to it, where you can see your neighbors, where as you're walking you can pick up litter, where it can keep people in the community involved with their neighbors, keep people in touch with the seniors, with the locked in, with it encourages 4 of your community values: environmental responsibility, parks of course would do that, social equity. It almost like to a T is fulfilling some of the quotes you guys have under social equity, like treating the most vulnerable with dignity and acceptance, providing fair access to resources, encouraging full participation in all aspects of community life. So I don't see why it should be not put more concretely into Nanaimo's future community plan, that parks happen throughout the city. And I actually had like 4 pages of stuff to talk about, but I'm trying to be very succinct, and I know there's lots of other people that are wanting to talk, so you guys don't have to all answer me, because I know there's no like for sure yes you can give. But I just want to know and bring it out that it's on the radar for Nanaimo to get some more parks in areas that are not served. It's not just my neighborhood. When I look on the map, I see other ones that there's no way you can walk that far with a toddler, and not every home can afford 2 vehicles or has the time to do that. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I wanted to address some of that. I think if you watched last week or the prior one, that there is a huge park right behind Barsby School. We're investing a lot of money into it. We just finished the water park on it. We are going to put a BMX or a skate park in it. Mm-hmm. We have the only covered, we're planning on a covered arena or a playing field or play space in it. As the CDC before you presented, we have 200 parks in Nanaimo. So to say, Child Development Center.
Yes.
So
no, I know.
she discussed the accessibility issue. So there are a lot of parks, and I believe that they are spread everywhere. You just don't see playgrounds in all the park spaces. I think is probably what you're asking for, is a more playground or actually green space. There is. And we usually get parks, 5% of the land is usually donated from development to a park. So if there isn't big development and it's all privately owned land, we can't really expropriate their land if they don't want to develop it.
Oh, no.
So,
I'm not suggesting that happens. And I know that there has been development in the Harewood neighborhood on 3rd and Waikasaya, and now again on 3rd and Waikasaya, and the ones going in 8th and 9th. And the park that you speak of that is being built, where the skateboard park will be happening and all that wonderfulness, it's 1.1 kilometers from my driveway to its parking lot. So although I see there are parks around, they're not always easily walkable. Like I've heard a minimum, I'm not an expert in any of this, but I've seen different things that said a minimum 800 meters walking. And if there was, I don't even know who on staff would be knowledgeable about that, but we can see parks, and there are cat stream parks near my neighborhood. They're blackberries and creeks and gullies, which is great for wildlife, which is very important, but it's not going to let little kids go play.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to respond to this as well, and I wish we had a map in front of us that did show us where our parks are, because I'm frankly surprised at your comments. I think, as Councillor Hong has indicated, there are a surprising number of small parks in all areas of the city. We do have some very large parks, and the improvements to the Harewood Centennial Park behind John Barsby are very exciting. But there are lots and lots of small community parks. And our goal, in fact, our stated goal, is to have a park within a 5-minute walk of any location. And one thing that I would mention is, and I think it's an excellent program, what we call the Partners in Parks.
Yeah, I know.
Where if there is an undeveloped piece of land which has been designated for park, but there's maybe no playground equipment on it, and the community wants to see some improvements to that small park, then that can be brought about in a partnership between the city staff and the community, and help to develop what the community wants to see there. So I think there are a lot of small parks throughout the city, including in the Harewood area. There's many that I didn't know were there until I heard of them and investigated. So like I say, I wish we had a map here.
I wish too, because if you looked in between 3rd, 5th, Waikasaya, and Bruce, there's the ball field across from the old Harewood School. And Cat Stream Parks.
I certainly totally agree with your statement that parks are very important and community parks are important. They are a social gathering place for a community, and I would like to see as many as possible. And
I'm not saying just more. I'm saying look at the maps and see where they are and put them where they are needed.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Point taken. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up, because I had an experience, or I have this experience every time I go to Coquitlam to care for my grandchildren when their parents are working, and one is 2 and one is 4. The 4-year-old could probably walk to the closest park, but to drag the 2-year-old along, it's just not, it's not realistic. So I just wonder if a young parent's eye sees things differently than an older demographic's eye. And an older demographic might say, there's plenty of parks. because they can walk there. We have a 2-year-old, and you're trying to walk that same distance. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I have a suspicion, and I have no evidence to support this, but I think that there's been more prolific development in the north, and that generates the top lots. And that Harewood in the south end may not have had that same requirement. And so we don't have the same numbers of small neighborhood little parks for kids. So I think we need to look at things through that eye as well. And I thank you very much for bringing this up, and because it confirms my experience just last weekend. So I think you're on to something, and we should pay attention to that.
Thank you. I also wanted to say that you may have brought something up that's based on the history of the development of Nanaimo, and that is that a lot of the areas in Harewood were developed, decades ago. The approach up in the north end has been in the last 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. So in that 40 years, there's been a lot of changes in the approach. And I was well aware of what Councillor Thorpe had said with respect to the desire to have parks within 5-minute walk for anybody. Mm-hmm. And it may very well be that you've just pointed out something that most of us weren't aware of with respect to the development that happened 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago in one of our sections of our community. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper.
All right, I'm going to read a question from the web, and the focus is public safety. And the question reads, public safety includes places like downtown parks and playgrounds. Security is non-existent in downtown parks and playgrounds. Why is there no security on the list?
I wonder if we can have some staff help on this one with respect to the comments made with that security is non-existent in downtown parks and playgrounds. Councillor Thorpe?
Well, I'll start, Chair, but I'll start by saying that I can't agree with that statement. Virtually every time I'm downtown at one of our parks, I notice the RCMP bike patrol quite regularly making their rounds. Of course, they can't be everywhere, and we have our bylaw officers who respond mainly on a complaint basis. And again, they can't be everywhere, so I suppose the bottom line for this is it comes down to staffing levels. I have not had anybody say to me that they felt our downtown parks were unsafe. I know it's always a challenge to deal with some of the behaviors that happen, and the drug issue is always present. But I would disagree that security is non-existent. And I really do applaud the efforts of our bike patrol for the work that they do. And I think there's only a certain amount they can do, giving their resources. So again, that's something that is a budget item, and it's something that can be kept in mind. But that would be my response.
Thank you.
Your Worship, yes, I can agree with that. So we do have bike patrol. They are downtown. That's where they spend the majority of their time. For the last several years, we also had a foot patrol that was dedicated to walking the downtown area. So in that regards, we do what we can in the parks and in the downtown area.
Thank you.
I would further add, just because Richard's in the audience, that park staff regularly go through in the morning through the park areas and are checking on things as well.
Okay. Councillor Fuller.
It's interesting. Councillor Kipp just mentioned something, roast out the homeless, he says. Now, the reason that's interesting is there's a couple different groups of people. It's culture. There's a culture out there. The drinking homeless tend not to want to be in a public place. So they will go down to a place like Piper's Park, which is out of the way, away from kids. drug users and drug addicts will shoot up wherever is convenient. It might be behind a building. Pauline Herrera's school has been having a huge amount of problems with the park down below there. So the RCMP increases their patrols. They increase their presence in the areas when they become aware of them. Deverell Park up in the South End had a huge problem at one point. The more people that use parks, the less likely there will be for that behavior to happen in parks. So it's a conundrum. Sure, you could hire security, but what's security going to do? Call the police. So a citizen can call the police, and they're not going to cost us $30 an hour. So it's an interesting idea, but I do think our parks are served, and the more the community makes us aware of it, the better served they are.
Councillor Pratt.
That was my point that I was going to make as well, Councillor Fuller, and that is that the more we are aware when people don't feel safe, and they can be specific about why they don't feel safe, then we can address the issues. I know I use the parks downtown, and I use them very early in the morning, and I'm talking like 6:30 in the morning, and I never have felt threatened at all in the park downtown. But that doesn't mean that other people don't feel safe or are having an issue. And I would encourage the public to notify us when they do have a specific issue, because then we can address it, and then we can make sure that we're watching. And I think that's exactly what the RCMP want us to do.
Thank you. See no further speakers. Mr. Cooper.
Okay. The next question is also from the website.
Just for public on that one, we have 880 hectares of park in Nanaimo, 12 dog off leash, 173 kilometers of trail, 2 outdoor amphitheaters, 70 playgrounds, 25 sports fields, including 2 artificial turfs, 30 ball diamonds in Nanaimo across our community, 880 hectares of park. So, some of them are very big, but I think the thing is that we've had is in the older areas, we haven't brought the new standard of parkland acquisition into some of the older areas, and that's something I think the person really we can address is possibly purchase or more. And we've left money, and one of the key things we looked at is parkland acquisition, and I know Councillor Hong really has pushed for that acquisition land. But we do have a fair lot of fields, but do they meet the needs? Are they accessible? Do they have accessible play areas in that? And that's, I think, where we're heading. I really appreciate the input tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper.
Okay, I'll read another one from the web, and then I'll turn back to the audience. This topic is on community wellness, and the question reads, it is well documented from international studies that bike routes need to be physically separated from car lanes. Will this occur here? And again, that's on community wellness.
Well, as a member of the Transportation Committee, I know that we have discussed that numerous times. And we still have a lot of work to do. There is a secondary bike cycling network in Nanaimo that is planned to be next phase. However, there's a lot more work to do. For example, Hammond Bay Road. People tell us that they absolutely feel unsafe on Hammond Bay Road when they're cycling. So we're going to have to look real hard and carefully at some of our major thoroughfares. As far as the separation from car lanes, that is absolutely being discovered around the world, that one of the reasons why people do not use the cycling infrastructure that may or may not be in place is simply because they don't feel safe. So we have to do a better job of creating a feeling of well-being while they're in there using these facilities. I don't see anyone else.
Hi there, my name is Matthew O'Donnell. I have a suggestion, and I guess it's just leading into a question about your pillars. It's about the environmental committee, like Councillor Brennan was talking about earlier. I personally, as a private citizen, I really feel it's important to have a standalone environmental committee, while at the same time, I totally understand what Councillor Kipp and what Councillor Fuller were saying as well. One thing that actually kind of stuck out in my mind was 2 weeks ago when this discussion was happening. Councillor Fuller, I'm paraphrasing here, but said something to the effect of, the environment affects everything. It's obviously in 2016, we have to be very environmentally conscious, so it would make sense to me for there to be like a viewpoint, I suppose, of the environment in every committee. But at the same time, I think there should also be a standalone environmental committee. I think it should be both, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I can't really stress that enough. I really, really feel that the environment is very important. And I guess that suggestion to maybe look at both ends and try to figure out a compromise to have the committee, but also have a presence on all the other committees. That kind of segues into your actual 5 points in general. I believe that, well, let's look at the first point. I believe it was improvements to the South End waterfront. That's a very specific point, and I think that's a very valid point. I think that should be a priority of the city, but it's very specific. And then we move to point number 5, community wellness. It includes bike routes, the environment, poverty, economic accessibility, all very important issues, but I feel as if they were, this is a guess, but I'm guessing that the first 4, they're very specific, and then number 5, you had a laundry list of other very important issues, and you just kind of group them into community wellness. That's what I believe. And I think that's not beneficial to our city. Going back to what I was saying earlier about how, some issues, such as the environment, that would affect all things, I suppose. But I also don't believe that environmental issues and poverty are directly connected. I think they're indirectly connected, but I don't believe that they are directly connected. And I do agree with Councillor Brennan in the sense of, if someone says their expertise is theatre groups in Nanaimo, as a citizen, I really I don't think that they should be having as a direct role in something like, say, the environment or poverty, as someone who with more education would be. I know I'm rambling here, so I do apologize, but I guess that's what I'm trying to suggest there. So my question here, it would be for the community wellness thing. Could someone in council or could someone answer what a key priority for this city would be for poverty and fighting actual poverty? Like an actual specific strategy that you have.
Mine's employment. Working on the agenda.
Councillor, we've got to speak on this. Councillor Fuller.
Okay, I'm going to hit about 3 of the things you talked about, the environmental committees. Ms. Samra, could you explain how the city is going to be working with the RDN and working with yada, 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 yada? Okay. How does the environment fit in with social planning? I gave a perfect example, passive housing. BC Housing at one point mandated that all of the affordable housing in the province that they would be funding had to meet certain LEEDs standards, environmental friendliness. And with regards to poverty, one of the things we're looking at is an affordable housing initiative and a complex strategy on affordable housing. So not just going to look at affordable housing. It's going to look at the secondary suite policy. It's going to look at density bonusing. We have one of the most difficult means to get density bonusing that I've seen. You've got to meet 7 different criteria. So no one really goes after that density bonusing. What they do is they come to us and ask for a variance, and we usually give it to them. But what do we get out of it? That's the thing. So the Affordable Housing Initiative is going to be key to addressing poverty on all levels. Homelessness, low-income wage earners, single parents. It's going to be huge. People with disabilities. So that one is going to be huge. And I believe Ms. Samara is going to answer the last question I mentioned with regards to the environmental work the city, RDN, et cetera, are going to do.
Ron.
Thank you. I'll just note that staff are working with the other stakeholders at another working group, but in the interest of time, we're only going to 9:30. There's another agenda item, which is the presentation from the Nanaimo Port Authority delegate. I'd be pleased to have this discussion at the next eTown hall that we're doing. And there's going to be one that's connected with the committee structure as well. Probably not until September, because people have been advising it's better to consult with the community in September than it is in August. So we'll be pushing it off until then, but then a fulsome session just on that.
Thank you.
Just a super quick follow-up on that is that committee that they're forming with all the professionals will be able to bring in other environmental professionals into it when needed. So it's covered. It's going to be covered big time, and I'm sure we'll see that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for clarifying.
We do have other speakers, but we're going to have to wrap it up pretty quick. We're at 9:18 right now. So, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Matt. The interesting thing about the Environmental Committee is that when the committee was struck, members of those committees were also assigned to other committees that would require an environmental lens. Mm-hmm. So the committee that Councillor Hong was talking about, the Design Advisory Committee, there is a member of the Environmental Committee who sits there, who's been appointed. They come back and report to us. So somehow they sit in on it, and that may be it, maybe sitting in on it. At any rate, those things can happen, and because I agree with you, it is important to have an environmental lens on those committees that require it, but not at the expense of the full Environmental Committee. On the issue of poverty reduction, really is what we would be looking at. Poverty is a result of not enough income. Income is the most serious issue for people who live in poverty, because by definition they don't have enough money. We can't do a lot about that. That's a federal and a provincial responsibility. But what we can do is try to alleviate the effects of poverty, and by ensuring that your family income doesn't stop you from gaining access to, I've written them down, access to services like recreational services, the pool, our parks, enough throughout the city so that everyone gets to recreate. We can ask that an amenity for a large enough development that's going to have a number of houses in it, or townhouses or condos, that there be space for childcare centers, because childcare centers are what affect your income. If you can afford your childcare, then your income is not as severe. It's not as severe a problem. So we should be looking at those kinds of things. And there is a joint committee among the city and other organizations and individuals who are looking at poverty reduction planning. And those are some of the things that they're looking at. Access to education is another thing, but it's not something we can probably have a lot of impact on. But we have to understand that income is the issue, and that's outside our jurisdiction. But we can attack the effects of poverty. That's what's really important for us at this level, in my view.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Just quickly, in respect of the speakers and time, thank you, Mr. O'Donnell, for coming out this evening. Just quickly on poverty is the role of Councillor Brennan. We can't do too much, but nonetheless, we can do a lot. For a simple fact is poverty is driven by mental health, addiction, job creation, and fair wages. So mental health and addiction is, in my experience in my day job, is the main cause of poverty. But nevertheless, what we can do today would be, whether someone's in poverty, we got to make sure people that are struggling behind that threshold are living with dignity. And some of the homes these people have to reside in breaks my heart. Some of these apartment complexes, which I won't name for legal liabilities, but should not even exist. So we have to pull our socks up. And there's one apartment I've named numerous times at council, which this saddens me. but nevertheless, I can go on and on about that. So that's my quick piece on poverty in a snapshot. In regards to the environmental committee, I look forward to hearing. This is where relationships and partnerships are key to. Yes, we have a committee that will work, whether we want lead standards for this development or waste and whatnot. I totally understand that and respect that. But and also at the same token is the strongest environmental movement this council can have is a relationship with the POG committee. And the POG committee has been dormant for unfortunately too many years until recent. That's with the SFN. And SFN and a partnership with SFN and a true, real, meaningful relationship is our biggest ally and strength in environmental, because we all know from the conservative government, I forget what bill it was, where it basically wiped out a lot of environmental rights. So the only environmental rights really much at that level in this neck of in our world is the First Nation rights, and here in this city, the Douglas Treaty, where all referrals go through SFN. So if there's concerns that whether it's fisheries, water, or whatever it may be, the referral process would go through the POG. They should make that part of your POG committee discussions. I'm not on POG, but nevertheless, that'd be a suggestion. And being in relationship with them is our biggest strength in regards to the environmental concerns, which people bring forward. So I just wanted to touch on 100 miles per hour. Sorry about my pace here. I feel a little bit of pressure here. So I just want to share those comments. Thank you.
I appreciate the clarity from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. We're running to 9:23. I have two more speakers, Councillor Kipp and Councillor Bestwick.
Triple bottom line accounting, you know what that is?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Triple bottom line accounting, you
Yes.
know what it is? And it usually is in context of all together.
Yep.
You judge social, environment, and your financial things. And they're usually judged together now, not separate in isolation. No one isolates their environment committee anymore. They're putting it together. Triple bottom line with governance and organization and operations built into it. So putting them together. Equity, environment, finance, all in one. Because what we get, the Environment Committee has some great ideas, they're environmentalists, but there's no pricing attached to it, no thought of cost maybe, I'm just saying maybe. And we need to lobby the province on poverty.
Yes.
And education is more important almost than employment, and because that creates self-esteem and the ability to pay money or get a good paycheck. So I appreciate your question, but triple bottom line needs to be done together. Separating it out is isolation.
I know you're short on time, but I just want to say really quickly, I think I 100% agree with that, but I also think that there's definitely room for both. Like just strictly in my head here, I'm seeing like an environmental committee and just representative from every committee from that committee on every other committee. It sounds way less bureaucratic than it sounds from me saying it right now, but I think it would make everybody happy.
A follow-up, if you look at the old minutes, when anybody was on another committee and they come back, they rarely had anything to say.
That's a fair
you look
point.
at the reports, it was a nothing report, because they're so busy, they're a volunteer. They forgot last week's committee.
That's a very fair point.
So the reports don't flow. That's the problem, too. Thank you.
Thank you. Last word, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. I won't talk to the poverty issue. It's already been spoken about. And just as it relates to the Environment Committee, so stakeholders, staff, councillors are going to be on all of our new committees and establishing and developing the terms of reference for all of those committees over the next, 1 to 6 months. During that period of time, when we give it its chance, and if any one of those committees don't materialize and work as efficiently and fluently as we thought, we need to move something over here and move something over there and shift this and shift that and add this and delete that. Well, that's what this shift is all about, so that we can create efficient operations at our committee levels. And it doesn't mean that the way they were was wrong and way out in left field, but we're just shifting, and let's give it the 6 months. Let's give it 6 months. And I'm quite happy if the environment thing doesn't work on the 6 committees. I hope it does. But if it doesn't, I'm not going to decide for all of those committees if it works or not. But somebody's going to tell us, staff and councillors and stakeholders and committee members, that it's not working. Okay, then let's shift. Then let's fix what's not working. Instead of saying, it's never going to work. This is so wrong. well, you know what, let's give this a shot, and I'll be quite happy to say everybody else was right and everybody else was wrong and we should have done this in the first place. Well, let's just give this a shot, because that's what we're attempting to do, is to try to make it better. We're not trying to make it worse, I don't think. And if it is, then let's fix it, because I hope we're all big enough and got enough common sense to fix it if it's not working, because enough people are going to. So nobody knows it's not going to work yet. Everybody's just saying it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's just, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work.
I think a lot of it, too, was concerns, maybe the message being communicated or miscommunicated or getting lost somewhere about what was going to happen. I think a lot of clarity was provided tonight pertaining to the committees. And once again, I thank everyone for clarifying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper, take us home.
There's been a couple of questions regarding the boathouse. So under recreation, culture, and sports, I would like to know why the boathouse proposal has not been considered under recreation, culture, and sports.
Mr. Cooper, we're going to finish at 9:30, so we don't have time to answer any more questions.
You say take us home. That's the last question. So
I thought you were going to wrap up. We'll be 15 minutes answering this question.
Okay, so
I can guarantee that.
I will wrap it up by indicating that there are a number of questions that remain, and I gather there are 2 members of the public that haven't yet spoken. What I would encourage for the public, if you want to complete those forms, send them to me, and I'll make a note of those. And then for the questions that weren't answered, as we typically do, we will provide those answers on our website.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, that concludes our community town hall meeting for tonight. I'm going to extend it for an additional half an hour, and I hope everybody at home enjoyed it, and the folks that were here, and we apologize for any delays to anyone else that has other business tonight. We do have our next